Okay, so this is the installation video for LiveView Native version 0.2.0-beta.1. Here we are going to generate a brand new Phoenix LiveView application, and we skipped the dependency compilation step, but we're just going to CD into our new application and then start up our code editor. Next here, we are going to do, we're going to add LiveView Native and LiveView Native Swift UI dependencies to our project. Make sure that you tag it to the 0.2.0-beta.1 versions. We will be releasing a few release candidates over the coming weeks with our intention to do a final for 0.2 around January 15. But in addition to this, we'll demonstrate it in a moment, but Floki needs to change in your dependency list here. But let's just see the error first that you'll probably get because it's not obvious. But right there, you'll probably see this error that Floki, there's a disagreement amongst the dependency types or environment types. So just remove that only test limit in the mix.exs and everything is going to run. Next, we are going to run the LiveView Native installation step. What this is going to do is it's going to generate some code into Elixir code into your project, but the really big one is that it's going to generate your Xcode project for you as well. Now, after compilation, we get an interactive CLI here where you can provide some values, but we're just going to go with default root path, example.com, and number 1 generating for iOS. What code it generates, Elixir code, it adds this native.exs environment config. The second one there for style sheet, I'm considering rolling this into just the top level plugin at some point in the future, so that might go away. And then, of course, we're importing our config through the regular config.exs, so it's available in all environments. And there is our native SwiftUI Xcode project. We will open that in a little bit. So what we're going to do next is still part of the installation instructions. For our LiveView and Live Component use, like when you do use your app name web dot comma LiveView and such, we need to extend it to support LiveView Native. So in the LiveView function, you're just going to add use LiveView Native.LiveView and Live Component, use LiveView Native.Live Component. Pretty simple. Next, we are going to add the LiveView Native session plug to our pipeline. This is also going to change in the future. We're working along with the Phoenix core team to enable a bunch of stuff that we're currently working around in LiveView Native, specifically around formats and such, but hopefully this should be a smoother process in the future. So we're going to add a new live endpoint called home live. We will add the live directory, and then we're going to add the home live module. It's a little weird watching myself kind of live code. So I recorded this earlier in the day, and I cut it up, and then I had a few meetings, and so, oh, there's an error. Yeah, it's interesting watching myself code it and seeing me make mistakes as it goes. So right there, line 4, I didn't add a def. I catch that later, not too much later, hopefully. Anyway, so here, this is a basic, regular HTML live view, and we're just demonstrating the nothing up our sleeve type stuff when it comes to extending this for LiveView Native. So we have to add support for layouts. This was also another major change for 0.2 from 0.1, a blocker for us making general recommendation to use it. So in our layout module, we add LiveView Native.layouts, and then you have to make sure that you change the embed template string to have .html at the end. And oh, there it is. There's the malformed render function. So let's see how long it takes me to catch this. Not too bad. And I did not get the database set up. So I think I edited that out. It took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out, maybe like 2 or 3 minutes to figure out I forgot to migrate the database. I was just seeing red, I wasn't reading the message. So that's migrated now, Ecto's set up, and we are good to go. So here is our very complex LiveView web application. Yes, great, Brian. All right, so now let's get into LiveView Native. So we're going to start by defining a new render function, and there I go. I ruined my indentation. I'll catch that later, I believe. But on the render function, we inject the format into the socket data assigns with the plug. That's what the session plug does. It also injects live reload for LiveView Native. But this allows us to match on the render function the format. And in the future, recently there was a PR merged into LiveView called Render With, which is going to provide similar functionalities so that we can delegate out to render functions specifically from within the LiveView. So this will allow us to delegate out to specific render modules that have a render function, and we can get a lot more code isolation that way, which is better. Okay, so we just created a very basic template there, and you'll notice the use of the sigil Swift UI. You have to use that instead of the Heeks template. And we opened up the Xcode project that was in the native directory that was generated. Here we have a long wait for...
Few moments later.
Yep, so this was really sped up. It took about 6 minutes for all of the assets and everything to build with Xcode. In addition to that, a few more minutes later, yeah. In addition to that, we had some things we had to opt into because we're not a trusted developer yet. So there is the template, hello Swift UI, and this is rendering out text views from Swift UI. Pretty basic stuff, but it's rendering out just fine. We're going to reorganize our layout here with our dev tools so we can edit the code and see the simulator side by side. And I believe the first thing I do here is demonstrate the live reload feature, which is already a major improvement over normal Swift UI development, because for any changes, the preview pane is kind of not great in Xcode. It breaks a lot. So you typically have to stop the simulator and restart it, and that takes time. But here we can see that changes are instantaneous. Okay, yeah, this looks great, but what if we want to style it? So big change from 0.1 to 0.2 is the introduction of style sheets. So to do that, we're going to add a styles directory, and we're just calling this home styles. You're free to call your style modules whatever you want. But styles are put into a module, and we want to use LiveView native.stylesheet, and you can see right there I did LiveView.stylesheet. So here's a thing that I will catch in a moment too, and we pass it the format, which is Swift UI. Swift UI is a format in the same way that we're treating HTML, JSON, XML as formats. This function at the end, the class function, is a catch-all. The sheet sigil allows us to define our styles along with the rules within. So we're going to just add a color style here, a pretty basic one. It's going to be a class name color-red. And to do that in Swift UI, these are called modifiers. Modifiers kind of somewhat play the same role as style rules in CSS, but they go a lot further than CSS rules. And typically the way that we've written this is such that you should be able to rely upon the documentation from Apple. Like, we're trying not to deviate from the way that these frameworks operate and behave and are written natively, so that we don't have to reproduce all the documentation. So here we have foreground style, and then the .red is a member expression. It gets expanded out to color.red, color being a struct in Swift UI. there's all sorts of like compile time things that happen in Swift that you'll become familiar with. Okay, what's next here? So we added use the style sheet in our LiveView module, and this injects the style sheet for use. And oh, this is when I had LiveView instead of LiveView native in the style sheet. And I tried running the server again because always something that doesn't work the first time, try the same exact thing over again. I think I catch this in a moment. There it is, line 2, fix it. All right, LiveView native.style sheet. Great. Okay, now it should run. We may have to bounce the server. The simulator. Oh, in addition to this, okay, so one thing, because the styles directory is not currently being watched by the live reloader, we have to add it in. So if we just add styles there, now the styles directory, any updates will trigger live reload to run. But I believe for some reason we still have to bounce the simulator for this particular case. And we'll get better at making sure that live reload will cause the simulator to reboot, and when the endpoint's available again, it will attempt to reconnect. This will improve over time, but for now, if things aren't working in the simulator, just stop it and restart it. It's very Erlang-y. Okay, so we're going to add the class color-red. And ironically, I'm actually colorblind, so I could not see that color. It's red if I get really close to it. I don't know why I chose red, but here we're going to just change it to blue so that it's more obvious. And yep, change the class name there. All right, great. Now we got a blue. And let's go ahead and try a different color. Going with green. And of course, it doesn't update because we haven't changed the class name on the element yet. And great, it's green. But you don't want to, what this expands out to is actually a function clause. And we can rely upon pattern matching within our style sheet to give us more flexibility. So here we actually have a small syntax that's very similar to string binary pattern matching. And this helper function to IME. That will match the dash, the value that comes after it, and the toIME will do a typecasting to a intermediate member expression within our style sheet so that it works. We're going to be changing that function out probably pretty soon. There's going to be some changes on the style sheet syntax coming up, but not the underlying AST. So what we have here is we added 2 more classes to our element, bold and italic. I went back to blue because I couldn't see the color. And we're going to add a new class name, bold. And we look at the SwiftUI modifier documentation for bold. And on text, there is somewhere there. There it is, bold. And we can see that it is a function that can be called directly or take a Boolean value. I don't think we support it being called directly, and I demonstrate that here. You always have to pass in the explicit Boolean. And so if we do that, nothing, but if we add true, now it's bold. And we're going to demonstrate very similar thing for italic. And if I recall, yep, I make it, plural by mistake. That doesn't do anything, so we fix that. Now it's italic. Never mind the, the error lines that you're seeing in my editor. I think my dialyzer is not set up properly. So complaining. Okay, so we're going to add a little bit more complexity here to this basic little demo app. And on the web, we're so accustomed to the box model, but in SwiftUI at least, you're going to have to become accustomed to stacks. Stacks are how elements become organized and are related to one another, pushed around and such. And VStack stands for vertical stack, HStack stands for horizontal stack, ZStack, as in Z, stands for, I guess the Z dimension stack. I don't know if Z has a specific name there, but in any event, Z dimension. So like things stacking on top of one another rather than being displaced by one another. We're going to add a variable that we can read. So we're just setting up our mount function and declaring a count value that has an initial value of 0. And we're adding a new text view here that is now rendering out the count. My Ruby brain keeps wanting to say instance variables every time I see that @ symbol, but I know it's not. Okay, so we have a 0 rendering out in the color green. Now let's show off some event handling. And I need to put it below this function. I think this is where I catch the indentation issue. Yep. Come on, see it. There you go. That was horrible. All right, so let's add a new handle event function, and we're going to respond to, every time we click on the number, we just want to increment it. Pretty basic demonstration here. And we're just going to make this as simple as possible. We're just going to take the current count value in the assigns and add 1 to it. We have nearly all of the events from LiveView covered, and we'll be going into these more in the future. There are some events that, of course, just don't make sense for LiveView native, and we're always open to hearing use cases, though, to extend support for those events if somebody has a good use case. So we added the PH click event handler to our text element. We click on it, and we see it incrementing. Great. I don't know what I'm doing right now. I'm doing something. Oh, okay. All right. So LiveView itself is just another view in the SwiftUI view tree. So to demonstrate this, we're going to add another native SwiftUI view directly next to our LiveView. And we just added a basic text. And this time we do have to bounce the simulator because we made a change in the SwiftUI code. So you can see at the bottom it says foobar. That's our text value, and that's outside of the everything else that's surrounding it. And this is set up in such a way that if you have a pre-existing SwiftUI application, you don't have to throw it all away. You can use certain parts still native on the phone, and then just for what you want to use that is managing server-side state handling, you can add LiveView to that view tree. So what we're going to do here is actually demonstrate how to take some a bit more complex behavior. The background is a modifier, and one of the things I mentioned in SwiftUI that's a bit odd is that compared to CSS, modifiers can take views as arguments for certain things, and then views can have modifiers, and those modifiers can take views. It's this infinite nesting that was really, really difficult for us to account for. So there we had a text element, text view, and we had a background modifier, and we rendered a circle behind it using the background modifier. So how do we reproduce this in SwiftUI? So we're going to add the same text. It's going to render in a different location because what isn't obvious here is that we actually have a stack that wraps our application at the moment. You can override that with a custom layout, but without a layout, it just wraps everything in a nav stack, so navigation just works. But when we get format implied layout rendering, we're going to probably have this just generated as a file instead. So we added a new class, bg-circle, and we're adding support for this new class here. We're using the background modifier. And so we have a content named parameter, and we're setting it to the atom circle. So this is going to instruct the client that when it's rendering this background modifier, it should look for a child element in the view tree that has a template attribute of value circle. So when you use this template attribute, if there is no named content area that is associated with it, it just hoists it out and it doesn't render. But if you're setting it as a specific named content area, it will render it as part of that process. So here I want to change the color of the circle to blue, but I don't spell blue properly. And we can't use color dash because foreground style does not apply to circles. We have to use the fill modifier. So I'm adding a fill and same pattern matching for color. And again, the to IME, that function will be going away, and it doesn't work because I didn't spell blue properly. But you'll notice too is that even if we have something misspelled or malformed, the application is not crashing. And we want to have that experience where, if you don't use a modifier that is known by SwiftUI or you spell something incorrectly, it shouldn't crash out your entire app. It should still just work. So this was the get up and going Hello World application for SwiftUI. And in the coming, probably in a day or two, we'll be releasing release candidate 1. I'll have more complex demonstrations to show. And we're just going to keep building this up over time. I'm really excited to see how people take this and use it and build up some cool stuff. Enjoy LiveView Native. Thank you.